You're listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense with your host, Doug Thorpe. Here's Doug.
Well, hello again, everyone. This is Doug Thorpe, and you're listening to another episode of Leadership Powered by Common Sense. Today, my guest is going to help us understand a little bit more about having empathy as a leader. And don't shut the show down. Don't turn it off. Don't change channels. There's some important information to be understood here. And I'm going to invite you just to have that open mind for just a moment, and let's get into it. My guest is Michelle Howe. Michelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Doug. It's great to be here.
So, as is a little bit of a custom here on this show, I always ask my guests to give us a little bit of backstory, your journey in the adult world as it is, and maybe it goes before that, but tell us your story on how you got into the work you're now doing.
Well, I didn't plan any of this change. It just kind of, I moved into it. My background was accounting, CPA, consultant, very logical. I could put puzzle pieces together left and right, not a big deal. But on the managing myself on the back end, I always was very introspective, and I was always, things didn't always quite line up. I didn't always seem like I needed time. I needed time to process. I needed quiet. I needed, I'm like, I don't know what all this is, but okay, I work with who I am. And wasn't till my late 30s that, I could figure, I was very intuitive. I could figure most things out. I could see through things, but I got shocked. I was shocked, hit by 2x4. Basically, my life could have turned upside down and inside out. And I discovered, after a lot of digging, because that's my personality, is more, if I have a problem, I'm going to figure out what the heck is going on. I discovered Judith Orloff, sensitivity. And then I'm not really sensitive. And then I discovered the 30 traits of an empath. And I read, and I'm like, oh, well. Who knew? I'm like, who knew that being an empath, empathy, similar, but not quite the same as an empath. No one would ever say I led with emotion, because I never did. I always could sense what was going on. I could understand the person, where they're coming from. I could become that person. So I was good at consulting. I was good at seeing the bigger picture and shifting the way someone was processing their life. People would tell me their stories. My husband is like, I don't know what is wrong with you, but when you go to a conference and then you hear this person you meet, and then they tell you the story that is like the most dramatic trauma in their life, and they're sharing it with you, he goes, I don't know what's wrong with you. I'm like, I don't know. I go, I don't mind. It's fine. But it wasn't till my little 2x4, my little crash in my late 30s, that I thought, what is going on? I feel like I don't know who I am. I don't know what this is about. And I've always had my pulse on, or at least I thought I had my pulse on it. So I don't know how many people, come to a point where they're really examining who they are. What are my choices? Why do I feel this way? And I'm sure they don't lead with that. It's not visible to the world. But for some of us, it's very important and valuable, because you feel like you're kind of like dangling. You kind of lost your way. You might show up as successful, but you don't feel successful on the inside. Things don't quite line up. So that's how I got into empath evolution. I looked around and I go, oh my gosh, there is empathic people all around me, and they're finding ways to numb the feeling and the emotion. And there's a reason why they're built this way. There's a reason emotions are showing up. They need this information. There's a whole opening up, because I didn't quite become who I am today unless that had happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. I feel it needs to be brought into the world for many reasons, because people are looking here and looking there and looking this other place to try to numb, to try to find a solution where maybe the solution is all inside. Like it just hasn't been presented in that way where you can, oh, how I feel is more than my thoughts. It's more than what I buy. It's more than my status, my role. That needs a little bit more attention so I can like harmonize what's going on inside of me. And the gift is precious for those people that are open to it. It's priceless, actually. So that's why I'm here.
Well, and I appreciate this opportunity, and thank you for sharing that story. And what was going through my mind as you were describing all of that is that if we talk in terms of a simple spectrum, 0 to 100 or hot to cold, what I'm hearing in your observation and your discovery, there are people that are way out on one end of the empathetic or empath scale. That's almost the sum and substance of how they look at the world and how they show up. And I'm confident that if that being true, then you move back along that scale and you get a lot of people that are on the extreme other end. They fundamentally have no ability to feel, no ability to sense or be aware of that part of their being. And I do see that in leaders that I've worked with. Maybe they've been conditioned, maybe they've been, or maybe that is just truly how they are. In other words, they show up in kind of a rigid command and control mode, which allows no room for empathy or being an empathetic person. And whether that's by definition or by actual personality makeup, as you and I were talking in the green room before this, my understanding is I read all of the compelling data that's being generated these days in employee engagement surveys, employee exit surveys. The workforce at large today is expecting or needing and wanting their leaders to be more empathetic. And my observation, and I've talked to hundreds of leaders about this, I think the COVID epidemic definitely changed everyone's mindset about life and work. And I think we crushed what had been the romantic notion of work-life balance before COVID. And I think we ran headfirst into the reality that the truth is work and life, your life outside of work is more of a harmony issue. They both go on simultaneously. And you can't turn one off and turn one on. And I think now, again, as how that's showing up in the workforce, people have different expectations. They have a different view. They have a different set of values about how work factors into what their dream and desire for life may be. And if the boss and the company are not giving them what they want, they vote with their feet. They're out the door and they'll go find another opportunity.
And listen, they're going in the right direction because your health, your happiness, it's priceless. Why would you be someplace where you're not growing, you're not necessarily appreciated? You could be earning a good paycheck, but at the end of the day, your life goes by very quickly. And those days, those moments, your contribution matters. You don't want to overstate that. And I'm certainly not here to say we all need to be, the workforce needs to operate with empathy, number one. But the reality is we're human beings and human beings have feelings and we're all here to value one another. So how do we really show up? Yes, the organization, the mission, yes, it's important, but you have to integrate the people in with the company, and the company, like, you need to create a space where people want to be, where people grow from being there. It's not It's not a one-way street, it's a two-way street, it's a relationship. And
Right.
you ideally you want to have that in every aspect of your life. It's a giving and a receiving. So, and the idea of everything being super logical, super data driven, yes, there you have to make some decisions. You have to consider that. That's data. All right. Then there's data that's not really showing up in hardcore numbers. And that's environmental, that's cultural. That's how is this place functioning? Is it toxic or not? When the boss comes in the door or in the boardroom, are we having a good time doing this work or is it stressful?
Right.
And beyond stressful, is it toxic? So, yeah, I hear you completely. And I think we're all shifting to really value our sense of inner peace, influence.
So, so help me understand. You have a whole business around this now, and you're branding as the Empath Evolution. So, what is the nature of the work? How do you engage with your clients?
The nature of the work is, how do I put this? It's transformation. It's not necessarily business focused. It's inner work. It's the outside is a reflection of the inside. So a lot of times, business coaching and whatnot, most of us are learning skills, which skills are important. We can't underestimate that. But the emotional aspect of it is what actually is a huge block for most of the coaching that's being done, most of the struggles that we have, challenges. We don't change the outside, we change the inside.
Hmm.
And then from that, the outside will shift. And it's really just broadening people's minds. So there is an energetic component to what I do. It's about shifting vibrations, resonance. I do go into the embodiment of who you are.
Hmm.
Um, and how do you use that? How does that show up? So that you, no matter where you are the same person. And you understand the lay of the land and you're very comfortable with how you're managing this outside. And you're very humble to learn from your experiences and to be like an embodiment of something that can positively impact the world. Instead of
Hmm.
adding fuel to the fire, you're actually adding, yep, it's shifting because I'm creating a space where I'm impacting them with my thoughts, my beliefs. Like even in talking to you, we are always sending out a message, sending out a message. Like, is it a message that's destructive and narrow-minded and a black and a white, or are we expanding and empowering the people around us? So that they're operating from that same. So, as many people as I meet, they're all coming from, a lot of times they're very empathic. They have felt like the world is a negative place and they're beating their heads up against the wall, trying to make it a better place, or they've kind of retreated away from who they are to appease the world. They show up in one way, but they really it's not, they feel like they're limited in how they can show up. And so that's not helpful or healthy or empowering to them. Um, so they understand the language of feeling and emotion, and they want to stop denying that part of them because it's just
Hmm.
causing them grief.
Hmm.
Um, those are my people, and they're actually quite intuitive. And one lady, she's got her own business, engineering firm. Great. She goes, the business world is missing some very key important things in all their training. She goes, I can't stay even in this meeting because it's toxic, because people don't understand what they're embodying and they're just working off that and they just lay it on the ground like they're not feeling it. So, so they've done that down in so many different ways, and they just want to go to town. Where, on her end, she's learning, how do I navigate these waters and still be me and not feel like I've been assaulted by this group. Like it's almost like developing your own style of showing up without limiting or just stifling yourself, because you could be perceived as weak, right? If you're and you really want to show up in the strength of what it is that you're. And it's not, certainly business is not all emotional. It's not, but it's relational. And that first relationship is with yourself, and the second relationship is with other people. And
Right.
everything that you are running into in life, you created it. So, when you really look at people on a hamster wheel, constantly creating the next thing, not taking a break, because if they took a break, their mind would be quiet enough, they'd feel defeated. They'd feel like something is wrong. They feel like they're not worthy. Like they're feeling like, so it's bringing a balance is a good word for it, a cohesive way of stepping forward into the world that's not so skewed one way or another. Um, and that's how we change one another, right? One person at a time. As a leader, you get there, all the people below you benefit from that. If that leader doesn't get there and doesn't hear it, all the people below it are kind of like stuck with that.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
You packed a lot in there, and I want to do a little bit of unpacking here. A couple of things going through my mind as we're talking about this. Number one, first and foremost, and this is going to sound horrible, and I'll call myself the devil's advocate here speaking. And what I'm getting ready to say is not my core belief, but it's an observation I've experienced many places. Number one, everything we're talking about, everything you just said, I can hear voices of those saying, well, there you go. That's the difference between men and women at work. And that's it in a nutshell. End of story.
Right.
Let's move on. And
Yeah.
I think back to what I do believe, that is an unfortunate conclusion, and it is a very narrow mindset, in my humble opinion. And for those male leaders out there that take that position, I say shame on you. I'm guessing you may not have a real highly productive and highly engaged team around you. You may be getting a lot of work done. You may be accomplishing a lot of wonderful things financially and operationally and otherwise, but is it sustainable? And is it sustainable with the team you have today?
Yeah.
Or have you embraced the idea of constantly churning your team and always seeing good people exit and new people have to come in and be trained and be positioned to move on to keep it going? And how frustrating is that if that's the truth of what you've got going on?
I'm seeing it from your end, from the business perspective of this. The door, the opening, the people coming in, leaving, that there's something wrong, but the leader himself doesn't know what that is. They're just, and probably in their mind, they've accepted this because I don't know what's wrong with these people. They
Yeah.
just come and they leave, right? So, and
Well, they typically say things like, well, that's no big deal. Our work is hard. It's not made for everybody. Not everybody's a good fit here. So, and we don't know who's going to be a good fit until they've been here a while. And I've heard that on a regular basis. And I'm
on a
like,
regular, and then you've also heard the men and the women.
right.
It's a difference between men and women. Okay, so let me just take that one. There's no doubt men and women are different. There is no doubt. But also, and there's no doubt that we can't all work with, like, I was just saying this about my business. Like, there's certain people I can work with very well, and certain people I cannot go there. So I get it. And I think to the extreme, like what I'm saying is interject the human component in what you're doing. This doesn't need to be a meeting about feelings and emotions, but it doesn't need to be so cutthroat, so single-minded. What are we doing? Let's put some culture, some benefit, some impact that is not just financial.
Right.
Why do you exist? So,
Well, typically, the way I've certainly presented it to my clients, and I've had it talked about in a lot of my coaching circles that I participate in, where we're all us who claim to be, executive coaches and leadership development people, we talk about the need to have the whole human presence. And International Coaching Federation, one of their chief tenets is we have to look at the individual as a whole. It's not just about the work. It's not just about this one thing. You have to look at the whole. And you were talking about embodiment. And as you were saying that, I was going through my mind. I use that as a tool when I get a client taking off on a tangent about a problem at work. Maybe it's a relationship issue, or maybe it's a frustration with a policy or something. I'll stop them and I'll ask them, where does that manifest in your body? When
mm,
that bubbles up, do you get a headache? Do you get a pain in your chest? Do you get a knot in your gut? Where does
yeah,
it show up? Where
yeah.
does it show up? And it always grabs people when I ask them that. They go, I've never thought about that. Let me think. Oh, yeah, I get real heavy in the chest. Okay, well, and what else goes with that? And then we start kind of peeling that onion to get to, the root of what is really at the core of how they might be reacting in the moment.
Yeah. I mean,
And
we are complicated little beings.
acknowledging the feelings. It's okay to feel. It's okay to understand that you did have a reaction in that moment. And what was that about?
And you know what? That is an intelligence.
Right.
It's an intelligence, like when you're relating and you're directing, and there's a softness. There's a place where this is a comfortable relationship. This is a supportive, and this is not. And why is it not? There's something off. I guess from my perspective, at a corporate level, you just want to set the bar over what is important. If you set the bar and you put meant, healthy, empowering environment, right? Open communication, but also bring it down to the linear. What is the response? Each person here has a responsibility to show up in a certain way. This is the behavior that we're looking for. And when this behavior isn't, it is kind of a struggle. Maybe that person themselves or that training says, "Hey, this is what you might want to know about
Mm-hmm.
this type of
Mm-hmm.
behavior and what." Because at the end of the day, the corporation is and the business is responsible for the environment and the tools that it brings forward, but that individual is responsible for how they show up.
Right.
And
Well, and I'm thinking as you're describing that, I'm going to Fortune 100 type company environment that I'm familiar with. There are many stories of companies who are involved in really heavy manufacturing. I'm thinking there's a story about Alcoa Aluminum. They were going through a dismal period of returns and results and employee safety and all of that. And they hired a new CEO, and the first thing he did, he went out to all the different factories and he observed that there were just outright unsafe conditions going on. I mean, there were catwalks that didn't have guardrails. There were, places that a person could be in jeopardy, losing a limb or losing their life if they slipped or fell. And what he did, he went he was asking, why are we having trouble getting all of this adjusted and repaired? And they said it's about company policy on budget approval to get new equipment and new guardrails, new harnesses, new hookups, that kind of thing. He said, we're turning that around. He said, there is zero limitation. If you need it, you got it. And he told the plant managers, get on that. I don't care what it's going to cost us. We've got to fix this. And in a very, very short period of time, all of those defects and challenges were addressed and repaired. And surprisingly, it shouldn't be surprising, but it was to most, productivity skyrocketed. People weren't afraid to go do the thing they had to do to get the production right. But formerly, there was this buried fear of, man, I could slip and I could die out there if I do that. And people weren't doing it. So, and there are many others. I've done work in the petrochemical world, and those.
When you set up an environment that is a win-win, safe, healthy, like I don't know. I just keep on thinking of I know very intelligent, smart people who think that everything should take half the time that it actually takes, that we really don't need, like the way we make decisions, where we cut corners, where we don't cut corners, and what is actually needed to create a nice, safe space. And that is ideal for productivity. When you don't set it up, it's like you're thinking you're going to create this 6-course meal in a kitchen that can only, like, maybe you're lucky if you get 2 meals out of it. Like, it's just set up for that.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, and I think the same holds true, even if you're not in one of those high risk environments, even just, I'm thinking, the classic office space type environment where people are doing much softer work, well, like your CPA work, it's office type work. And I'm not saying it's insignificant. I'm just saying it's different. You're probably not going to lose your arm in a pencil sharpener,
Life
right?
and death. It's crunching numbers, it's putting it together, it's reporting.
But even in that environment, back to the empathy part, a leader who is in the office looking around and realize, gee, Michelle doesn't look like herself today, and she just seems to be burdened by something. Hey, Michelle, how you doing? Is there something going on that you want to share with me? Is there anything I can do to help? What's on your mind? What's going on? And inevitably, you might get an answer like, "Well, I've got a sick child at home, and I'm not sure what we're going to do about it," or "I've got a sick parent, I've got a loved one that's struggling," or and if you're an enlightened leader, you might say, "Well, shoot, why don't you just go take some time, go deal with that." Go take care of it. We'll cover. We'll get your load right now taken care of, and just a sensitivity to that reality. And that's where I get back in the green room. We were talking about. I think COVID kind of abolished the work-life balance thing, and it's more of a harmony. It's life goes on concurrently with what your work is doing, and you can't deny that. And things that may bubble up and happen in life create emotional connection and sense of burden or obligation or responsibility. And you're battling the expectation at work with the expectation outside of work, and you got to make a choice. And if the
key word you just said was battling. We're not here to go around battling, or we're torn in different directions, we're stretched, we're this, we're that. Okay, no. Okay, no. You show up, you're present for whatever you do, and you don't get into this expectations of other people. Like, what are your expectations for your life? What are your standards? Where do you want to be? What matters to you? It comes right back to that, because so many people lose themselves in the world and they wonder, what the heck did I just do? Who am I? What is this nonsensical stuff that I'm doing? So,
And I'm glad you called that out, and I think you're spot on. I think that's exactly the challenge, and that's where I want to come full circle back to the person that might be in authority and responsible for that company or that office or that facility where this is happening. If you cannot, as a leader, cannot set up that environment that will honor that employee who has decided what their life is going to be like and allow them to show up to be part of your team to contribute the skills, abilities, and motivations they've got for purpose and contribution. If you can do all that, if you can set that up, then you're going to have a very high performing outcome for your business. But if you're constantly fighting, swimming upstream against, I really don't care what you think about your life, we have work to do, that kind of attitude.
yeah, yeah. As you're talking, I'm thinking through, because in essence, everyone has their life and everyone has their priorities, but then there needs to be, this is the business, this is our priority. This is how we're gonna make this as comfortable for you, but it's a give and a take. Like it's not like the business is responsible for the individual's happiness or whatnot. It's I'm gonna give you some tools. This is what we're about. We do care. But at the end of the day, we've got a business to run, right? We've got a business to run. This is
Right,
what do you need? So there's this open communication about what's actually needed. And it doesn't mean that you're not listening to someone's situation. And I don't want to even frame it as, but you're just allowing them to take ownership. Like you're setting up a space where it's not doggy dog, move, move. Like there's a human element in the discussion of it's a win-win for all factors involved in it. It's
right,
got to be a win-win. How do we make this a win-win without, well, I'm sorry, I don't have childcare and I'm really upset, and everyone has a certain responsibility of what, standards you could say, but you have to have heart in what you're doing. So it's like not all the way to the left, not all the way to the right. Try to stay in a certain middle with this.
right, right. No, I agree. And sometimes the idea from a business perspective, it's been popularized by Jim Collins in his all his studies, the book he wrote, Good to Great, and Making It Last. Um, he talks about you define the work you've got to accomplish, but then you have to go look for the right people to get on the bus, as he says. And it is true, not all work is suited for all people, but you've got to have some clarity on the profile that would be a good fit, and you have to be able to communicate that to the market so that the people that know they need an opportunity, they've got to have a job to create the lifestyle they want for their family, and they know that, and they're showing up saying, here's what I can do and here's what I can bring, and it's a matter of finding that good match. But I think the message here is that not all companies have done a good job of defining what that is. They just say, we do X.
It's defining what that is and seeing what the strengths of the person is coming to you are, and also setting up maybe there's some places this person needs to improve. This an assessment, soft skills and hard skills, right? They're all skills.
Hmm.
But if
Hmm.
you are able to, and it's hard, how do if people want to advance, you set a bar of what that means and what that looks like. And sometimes people are naturally not a good fit. They're never going to be that. So then I look at it and I go, what are this person's strengths? Put them where their strengths are. Don't
Right,
put them somewhere else.
right.
So
I
it's
love it.
an assessment of where they're at and where they fit, where they fit. Sometimes people lose their jobs and, we could be upset, they're upset, but oftentimes it's the best thing that ever happened to them. That wasn't a great fit. where they were. And maybe it behooves them where they would be a good fit, but that brainstorm, that discovery aspect of it, there's always a reason why something doesn't work for you.
Right.
A lot of times, unfortunately, I think we're almost sometimes the last people to know why
Right.
something, and we don't see around the corner, there's this,
Right.
right?
Well, as you brought that up, I'm reminded I have a dear friend and colleague who is a specialist in talent development, talent management, and she has her own business, and she uses the tool called the predictive index, and it's a great tool. I've had her use it on some of my client companies. And what it does, it gives the leadership of the company the opportunity to say, all right, we need to create this new job to do X, Y, and Z. And they can do a survey type assessment that will build a profile of what it takes to be successful in that job. And then
Mm,
that becomes a little bit of a template. And as you start interviewing candidates, you can give them the survey. And as they plot out, you can overlay the two. And the closer you get to a perfect match of the expected job and the candidate you have in front of you, now you've got a winner. But if you if you get a candidate show up and they're 180 opposite on all scales, well, they're not going to fit. It's just it's not going to be, you
it's
know,
not it's not enough of a match. And sometimes people don't have the hard skills, but they have the soft skill to look
right,
at it.
right,
They can grow into what that is. So, I'm not HR and I'm not, but you can see where you can see drive, you can see potential if you're really
right.
looking at a person. And then,
Well, and I've had many leaders, and I myself, in my day of running companies and teams, I often preferred to hire on perceived behavior versus skill set, because I always felt I can teach them the skills I want them to use for my business. I mean, yeah, they have to have some baseline related, but they don't have to have the exact skill coming in. But I want to know more about their behavior. I want to know more about their look at the world. How do they treat people? How do they look
so
at
you're looking at, do I want to be with this person in the room?
right?
You want to be with,
Yeah, yeah,
like, it doesn't matter just how what skills they have, what it looks like on a piece of paper, what degrees they have. Do I want to spend any time with this person? Are they an easy person to converse with, agree with, move forward with? Are they edgy?
yeah,
Are they kind? Like,
yeah.
those are all the things. Why would you want to be hanging out with somebody like that?
Yeah. Or it's not just me in the room, but can I see them talking to my customers? You
Yes.
know, would my customers want to be in the room with them? You know, that also becomes a big factor to look at. But yeah, you're right. That's exactly it. Yeah.
So there's that. What is that? What are you measuring there? You're measuring how they make you feel, the positivity, the work ethic, the work attitude, their ability to be kind to another, like not short. Like, those are all, I don't know how you measure those, but if we could measure those, we would say, wow, she's a 10. She's highly intelligent, driven, kind, follows through. Like, that's not something that's written on a resume. Like, you
Um,
can sort of see
well, the
there.
the popular way in the HR and recruiting world to do that is ask the so-called behavior-based questions. And the way that works is, a candidate sitting there in front of you, and you, speaking on behalf of the business, say, "Hey, Michelle, can you tell me about a time when you might have had to deal with blah, 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 blah?"
Yeah.
And your blah, blah, blah is your version of what happens every day in your business, but you make it generic enough to pose it to them as the opportunity. And then that's where you start seeing what their behavior is likely going to be. If they go, oh yeah, that guy got me, yeah, and they get all they get all negative on it, or there's just a lot of varieties of what kind of response you can get to that. But whatever the response may be, when you find the one that is viable for your own situation, now you're getting closer to knowing you've got a good match.
And in that, you felt something for this person that you interviewed. It wasn't, there's a feeling, there's a knowing, there's an exchange that's happening. Are you a good fit for my team? And I say it like even with my own stuff, I'm like, I just know when somebody's going to fit because I'm not resisting it. I'm like, yeah, like, yes, this is going to work here.
Right.
And
Right.
it's noticing that's subtle. And I always struggled with making decisions that were black and white. Yes, I can make a list, right? What's yes and what's no, what works and what doesn't. But at the end of the day, when it's a yes, I'm right up there and it's a natural yes. It's not cerebral. I'm not justifying it. I mean, I could even before, like I have had decisions where this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this because this makes the sense. This is my next step. And then like I was going to rent out a place and sign the contract. And the morning of, I could not get myself out the door to go do this thing that I said intellectually, I justified, told myself it made sense, but I could not physically do it. And that is the sensing, that's sensing, like that's part of empathy. It's part of an intelligence that we
Mhm.
don't even know we're
Yeah.
embodying.
Yeah.
What is the right thing for me?
Right.
Right? So how do we decide, which job is best, which employee is best? Like, and you can justify. I think the brain justifies things, but I like to work with, and I definitely a huge proponent of listening and flowing with what's next instead of this uphill battle against the grain and forcing yourself and willing this. Like that's how a lot of people, in my opinion, they end up losing touch with their intuitive side, with their knowing. One lady there, she's so driven, she was so driven, she was so work focused. They had to tell her she was having a stroke. Ma'am, there's something going on with your face. You might want to go check in the bathroom to see. And she had a stroke.
Yeah. Yeah. But was so out of touch with her
Yeah.
physical being that, yeah. Well, Michelle, part of me says I hate to end on that note, but we have to end. We're about up on time. Thank you for sharing this. I think it is very important work that I think leaders in all places need to understand and consider. And I do think, to sum it up, I think it is about challenging yourself on your own level of awareness and your own level of sensitivity to what you're really not just thinking, but what you are feeling about the matter, whatever that may be, whether it's a relationship or a decision you have to make. But thank you so much. Tell people the best way to get a hold of you if they're interested in knowing more about your work.
I would email me directly if you're interested. It's Michelle with two L's at empathevolution.com. You can also check out my website, but I'm in the middle of a slight rebranding tweaking. So it will shift. It's empathevolution.com. Success, where success begins inside, right? It's from the outside in,
I love it. I love it.
the
Yeah.
inside out.
Inside out. Yeah.
There you go.
There you go. Well, again, thank you for that. And as always, folks, we're going to have those links and that information on Michelle's company and her work in our show notes. So please drop in and check that out. I always like to remind you that we do have a video version of this show over on YouTube, channel by the same name, Leadership Powered by Common Sense. Take a look over there. I do want to put in a bit of a commercial note here. I am For those of you on my mail list, you got a notice from me recently. I'm very proud of my youngest son has launched his first company. It is called 7 Regions. It's all spelled out, the word 7regions.com. It is a very new and innovative line of skincare products. If you're worried about aging skin, he's got a whole suite of product that is good for that. It's been tested, it's been proven. It's all custom mixed and formulated. When you order it, there's nothing sitting on a shelf and aging itself, waiting for you to buy. It is custom formulated and packed and sent directly. So check it out, 7regions.com. And with that, we're going to sign off, say goodbye. Go out there and make it a great day.
You've been listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense, hosted by Doug Thorpe. If you would like to know more about the coaching and advisory services he provides, visit dougthorpe.com.